Okay. Now this final session, I actually know very little about, except that they've been working hard, and it's creative, and it's fun, and it's going to make complete sense, and it's going to tie up all our loose ends, and it's going to be fantastic. And it's called Acting Together, Cultivating and Fostering Change Through Creative University Community Partnerships. And I'm really pleased to introduce two of my colleagues, Paula Horrigan, who is a professor emerita, landscape architecture. She's also a member of CaRDI, one of the original founders of Rust to Green. I'm very pleased to see you, even though you don't come into work as much, you're working harder in your home office these days, you can tell. That's right, and in Utica, right? And also Shorna Allred, who's an associate professor and associate director of the Human Dimensions Research Unit in the Department of Natural Resources here at Cornell. And she's heading up the Rust to Green Binghamton effort. So, and with that, shall I give you the mic?
Yeah, we're not going to do a lot of talking. We're going to spend about the next, 10, 12 minutes with you, and then we're going to turn things around. The idea of this final session is we know we've all been pretty stressed out. So we're also thinking about a way we can kind of close this in the spirit of, I think, our higher aspirations of being effective in all the work that we do as partners with the university and communities, and to give you a little sense or a little taste of Rust to Green. So let's take it away.
Can everybody hear in the back?
Everybody can hear? All right. So Robin asked us to talk about what makes university community partnerships work. And as our title emphasizes, acting together is a process of cultivating and fostering change together. It's about building partnerships that are creative in nature and purpose. This acting together is what Rust to Green is all about. We always say that democratic civic engagement, action research, placemaking, and community engaged research and design are all about working with, not for one another. No longer is one over the other celebrated, one voice suppressed while another is given dominance, one who is disempowered and one who has privilege, one who's the expert and one who knows less. You know, like the grandma whose families lived there in the neighborhood for 3 generations, could she possibly know less than, say, me about her neighborhood? Acting together is the hardest part of university community partnerships. Plain and simple, it's the foundation on which all else builds. Acting together requires good foundation building, lest we fall back on what separates us. Our disciplines, our power, our privilege, our positions, our assumptions, our biases, our ways of thinking and doing things, our systems, and our geographies. When we suffer this fall, we miss out on opportunities to produce the transformative community development and change that comes from acting together. In 2010, when Rust to Green began working with community partners in Utica, we actually started out with an empty bag. Or rather, I should say it was a bag full of potential and possibility. Now that bag already had materiality and fiber and weight to it. But the things that would be woven into it, or that were already woven into it from academia, were things like action research, threads of placemaking, and resilience, and sustainability, and community design. And there were also threads from the community, including local assets, stories, people, landscapes, places, and neighborhoods. The test of the bag's strength would be the potential and possibility it could hold and produce. The new fibers and threads we weave together with and through it, the diversity of hands who touch it, the bag would become, full of possibility. One of our partners said he thought the biggest achievement of Rust to Green would be turning the negative narrative around. He said, everything's grown so negative after 40 years of decline, people feeling defeated, distrusting, not believing things can change. By creating small victories through Rust to Green, we've heard people say, gee, we didn't think that could happen, but maybe things can turn around. So here we are 7 years later. One of my students told me how surprised she was to find out how emotional the process of community development development is. She said, wow, Uticans are very emotional. And we're emotional. We really have to support the community and one another in the process. The participatory placemaking and community engaged processes on which we rely have not suppressed, but revealed what people care deeply about. And it's been very messy along the way. It's been an up and down journey involving struggle and challenge, points of defeat, points of pride and accomplishment. Overall, as university and community partners, with our bag of potential and possibility, those are our assets. We've accomplished a lot together. At Cornell, we created an acting together infrastructure, the community engaged capstone studio, the Rustic Green Fellows, the internships, the Rustic Green thesis projects, faculty and students working together, the moving of Paula Horrigan from landscape architecture into the Community and Regional Development Institute, a big move in a very siloed university. And in Utica, our acting together has been created through innovations by CCE Oneida that have put Rustic Green staff in the heart of downtown, in community development, in the Rustic Green Urban Studio funded by the Community Foundation for $150,000. There is at work. We've got Diane Shoemaker here. There's soon to be a new Rustic Green executive director, and we have had AmeriCorps Vista. We're hoping to have more of those to come. We've secured lots of money, multi-millions at this point, to advance projects born out of our hard work and magical thinking together. Cleaning up a brownfield site for a new public park, creative placemaking in Oneida Square, the new Food Policy Council, the Mohawk Valley Food Action Network, the One World Garden, the Kemble Park that just broke ground last week after about 5 years. It takes a long time. I'm never sure if it's a point of pride or embarrassment to tell that we started Rustic Green with $45,000 in the cash grant fund over 3 years. It wasn't about the money. It does help to have the money to start out, but it's more than money that makes people act together. What it really takes to get started is a committed group of university and community partners with the willingness to seek, uncover, and grow the inherent and potential assets at hand on both ends, in the university and in the community. And lots of magical thinking, and of course, a good bag of potential and possibility. And now I'm going to hand it over to Shorna. So this was just the big picture, because we want to put this back into you in a few minutes. But Shorna's going to give you a little bit of a taste of now what's taken hold in Binghamton over the last 3 years as a result of her taking the work from Rustic Green and moving it into another geography.
Okay, thank you all for being here for the final session. I wanted to share with you a little bit about how we're acting together with Rustic Green Binghamton. And I can remember in an interview we had with a city official in Binghamton about what it means to be resilient and to adapt in the context of flooding. He said, you know, the disaster didn't start the day of the flood. It's a slow motion, ongoing experience. Our perspective tries to collapse it into a prescribed period of time, but it's always happening and it's never ending. And I know what this means. I grew up on the Gulf Coast of Texas surrounded by water. And so flooding is not only an environmental issue, but a cultural, socioeconomic, and political one as well. And so Rustic Green is really about restoring the Rust Belt, building a narrative around rivers as important cultural, social, recreational, and economic assets of the community, and answering the question of how do we live in a changing world. We've been asking that question at this conference, living with poverty, living with inequality, living with fiscal stress, living with water. And so that's what we're really tackling with Rustic Green Binghamton. So how has Binghamton been changing over time? It was once called the Valley of Opportunity, a manufacturing center, a hub for everything from cigars to shoes to computers. The flight simulator was invented by Edmund Link in Binghamton. A wealth of manufacturing jobs that really attracted people to this region when the population peaked around 85,000 in the 50s and is now at 45,000. So we've seen a lot of changes in Binghamton, including how people use the rivers, as you can see here in these two photographs. Also, the flood of 2011 that came first Irene and then Lee right after in succession, that really caused this flooding, and that displaced over 20,000 people that were at the BU Event Center, the evacuees there. And this was 5 years after a major flood happened in Binghamton in 2006. And so it brings up the question of, well, what is the character of this place? How do people use the rivers? How does the river relate to community life and community economic development? And of course, you know, how can we, what is the place character of Binghamton and its rivers, and really how do we build that into the sustainable community development process such that the stigma or negative perceptions that people may have with the rivers due to things like flooding, how do we inform those narratives and really understand what they are? And so living with water is really about understanding what those narratives are and really learning the community and local government learning together and building community resilience and thinking about those narratives around water and informing them to enhance community resilience and also sustainability. So to answer the question of how are we acting together in Binghamton, this is Bob Murphy, who's here with us, the head of economic development for the city of Binghamton, and a very important partner who's here with our interns. And so one of the things we're trying to do is broaden the network of people working together around flood resilience. In 2016, last year, we put together a resiliency summit that brought together a coalition of NGOs, artists, elected officials, public and private sector organizations to really answer the question around, what we heard in our research from everyone is, what's being done? Nothing's being done about flood resilience. We've had these floods, but what kind of programs and activities and funding are going into place? So this summit was really put together to help provide some answers and progress reports to the community about what is being done around flood mitigation projects. We're also placing Cornell University students in City Hall in Binghamton to really work in a very community-engaged way on flood resilience and waterfront development projects alongside our local government and other partners. And the students live in Binghamton, so they really get a chance to know the community in a very intimate and meaningful way. Students are also doing creative placemaking on the rivers. This is Live on the Waterfront that's put on by the Office of Economic Development. And the students really took that opportunity to ask the community about two important statements. Aspirational, I wish the river had, and then also about their views of the river is. And so this provides important insights from the community about their relationship with the river. Arts is also a really critical part of what we're doing. And this aspect of youth working with the arts in community development. This is the Rust to Green Utica and Binghamton teams that went to Appleshop, a cultural organization that's been doing this in rural Appalachia since the 1960s, so we went there to really learn from them. We've also been listening to the community, holding story circles around the community. Story circles are about listening, about understanding, about growing from that understanding. And so we really wanted to find out what were the experiences of people that had been influenced or impacted by flooding, both residents as well as decision makers, and to really use that as a platform for moving forward. The students also brought the stories to life with a story map, which really maps the stories in geographical space with photos and videos. And so this is also a product of our interns back in 2015. And again, about arts-based development, we created, worked with Civic Ensemble to put together a community-based play that was based on the story circles and the interviews that have been done over the years in the Binghamton area. And so the voices really came to life on stage through Living with Water Stories of the Flood that was performed during the Resiliency Summit weekend. And we also, after the play, had a discussion afterwards. So it was not only the art form of the play, but also using that as a way to have dialogue with the community at the end, and also to really understand how it impacted them. So in closing, do arts, community-based arts projects result in social gains? How does this enhance place character? These are really things that we're going to continue to explore in Binghamton with Rust to Green, how to build place character around the rivers and capitalize on arts-based community development that engages the community in new and different ways. So that is a little bit about Rust to Green Binghamton. And right now, one of the things we would like to do is hear from you.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Before we do that, I just wanted to say also, I think it would, Scott Peters is in the back of the room, and really we should acknowledge Scott, because it's really, sometimes I think Scott, Paula, and Shorna are all turning into one person. We're becoming, and this was something I didn't hear a lot about this last 2 days. It's really the need for much more transdisciplinary work, because when we really truly do work across our disciplines, we change each of our disciplines. I'm a designer, I'm a landscape architect, I'm an environmental maker, I'm a placemaker, I teach placemaking. Now Shorna's all talking about place. She didn't used to talk about place, but now she does. And Scott is Mr. Narrative Knowing. And he's put some meaning into the things that I've been doing, but placemaking's been all about. So together, us coming from all these disciplines, from sociology and natural resources and landscape architecture, from education, wherever Scott's from, he's from everywhere. And